My name is Sarah.
My name is Mujib.
And welcome to episode 31 of Let's Get to It. And we're going to speak on human potential, which is a really big topic. So we might cover some interesting, varied ground here.
Right. Because, like human potential literally fits into every category of who we are as people. Like there's the basic physical potential, which is what jumps into my mind off the bat. But then when I really think about what it is that we're talking about more of like a personal potential, a holistic potential. And so again, there's so many different avenues. I could look at the potential of an individual relationship or of an endeavor or anything like that. And so human potential, it's a wide scope.
It's a wide scope, and I'll share with everybody the reason why it sort of came to mind for me anyway. And in the work that Mujib and I do on a daily basis, we talk a lot about empowerment, embodiment of that power. And I just have to share this because part of this kind of human potential theme is I was thinking, like, when I come in and I have a physical session with you, Mujib, like I feel physically empowered. And then that, like, the energy that is created and how I feel, like, stays with me after that session. And I can just speak to it so personally because in the last 10 days or so, when I've had a session with you, I've gone off and like used that energy and been accessing my potential in other areas of my life. And that's kind of like what I wanted to talk a little bit about, because there is a way, if you're focusing on releasing that like physical potential, that can carry through, and it can just ignite intellectual potential. It can ignite, emotional, like whatever it is. So like, I wanted to like publicly thank you for just like, like opening up that avenue. And I just think it's so important if people can kind of connect this like body and mind experience, that if you're feeling the sense of like empowerment in one area of your life, that it can flow into another. Right. So that's kind of personally, like, I was really like connecting with this because I was just like, wow, I'm walking out of my kettlebell session. I'm feeling so strong. I'm hype. I'm feeling good. That then I went ahead and I wrote an email that I had been like waiting to write. And I like just felt like I'm on top of the world. I'm going to write this. Like, I'm the shit.
Totally.
And if maybe it hadn't been for that session, I don't know, like we've used the word energetics, like the energetics, like just wasn't there. So I just kind of like want to call attention to kind of how, I don't know, this kind of all manifested for myself. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you have a similar experience or kind of how you relate to that.
Oh, totally. I mean, for me, the method to it all is that's the goal. Like that tapping into full potential and then letting that tap be what carries us through is really the goal. Because you know if I have to speak to why it is that the program is formulated the way that it is to show you that you're capable of more, show you how to access this higher capability, right? So we did something recently where I gave you that heavier kettlebell and just said, hold on to it, and let yourself start to interact with this. Let yourself get a sense of feeling what it feels like to be in that rack position. At some point in time, that might not have even been an easy thing to hold and just keep there, let alone to keep there and talk and visualize all these other different things. And to say like, okay, I could do that, or it's going to take me to doing this to do that, or at least I can see what that's going to feel like, right? So again, it's all these different ways of engaging and experiencing and exploring a higher potential. Right?
Yeah.
A next level. It's
Yeah.
tapping into this next level a little bit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that, because that experience, what you were experiencing then when you were holding that same thing, is exactly, you're going to experience that exact thing again. The only difference is you're going to add on to that experience the next piece,
Right.
which is the push press or something like that. I could how my mind gets all right from there into a pretty like lofty headspace, because it's like, well, then what's the push press going to show you the potential of, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
once you're actually doing 2 or 3 push presses of that, or once you're benefiting from that increased level of strength, what's that going to give you access to? So again, that's intentional, is trying
Yeah.
to tap into that deeper potential, that next level, scratch the surface a little bit more, show you
Yeah.
how close to the ledge that you actually are, or how close to reaching that next point that you are. Because then you leave and you know the high note that you're on, and you know that it's a high note, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like like if we're talking about like, hey, we walk into a headspace, we walk into a space, and we we want to be operating on this level, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
We want to be here. Well, what you're going to learn in the hour is where you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna be like, well, damn, I'm in that hour. That hour proved to me that my energy is actually up here.
Right.
Well, then of course you're going to walk into that office feeling like you're the badass,
Yeah.
because you just showed yourself how, you showed yourself where the badass meter actually is right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um,
Well, I wanna just like tease that out a little bit more, because here is, I think, what's so important about linking up with people who bring that out of you, like,
mm,
training with people that make you feel empowered, or working alongside people that make you feel empowered. Like, it's not very functional to be in spaces where your power is squashed, where you
right,
are made to feel small, where you are made to feel like you are less than or not enough. Because I can imagine a scenario where we have a one-on-one training session, and if your training style is to kind of like beat me down and just kind of run me ragged, or I feel
mhm,
exhausted, or I feel like I couldn't do something. I'm just thinking of like, sure, it's like a physical session, but there's this psychic element where I'm just like, I walk out of that session feeling like, oh damn, like I suck.
mm,
And I don't
mm,
want to make light of it, because there's, we I think everybody can relate to being an experience where, whether it's been a meeting in a conference room with your colleagues, or whether you're sitting across the dinner table from your family, or it's a training session, and like, we I think it's a very human experience to like have an experience of like feeling not good. And then like what happens afterwards, right? Like, usually usually good doesn't necessarily like bloom right after that experience, like if we're not feeling good. So if I had had a really just a not great experience with that training session, like I had an important meeting to go to an hour after that, and um had I left you not feeling great, like that energy would have carried into that meeting, where I'm suddenly like, maybe I'm second guessing myself, maybe I'm not feeling very confident, I'm feeling a sense of weakness and whatever. And that was not the case. And so what I think, to really kind of make people think about this, and like the who you surround yourself with, and what activities are you doing, and how do you feel, how does it make you feel, like the fact that we had this like kick-ass session, and I mean I literally was walking on air, feeling a sense of my own strength and potential, and that energy carried me into a really important meeting. And I was just like, yeah. And like, I can't, that's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that I had a really successful meeting about something that was really important, where I had to really sell myself and like present myself in a certain way and conduct myself. It really, that meeting really showcased how I saw myself.
right,
It's not a coincidence that, we had a really empowering, great session before that. And I really hope that people kind of like start to think about how those things are lining up for them in their lives.
mhm,
And like, yeah, so we talked about in our pre-conversation, like this idea of like decluttering your life. And if there's shit that like, I even think about your past, Mujib, when you were talking about your experience as a dishwasher. Like,
mhm,
if you have this thing that you're constantly showing up for day after day or week after week, and it's like it's not working for you, it's just like there was another path. There's another
right,
path for you to like, I mean, think where you are right now, right?
mhm,
Living this this beautiful life. And so like we do have this power to be like, no, that doesn't make me feel good. That's not empowering. That's not
Right,
getting me to where I want to go.
right, right.
I don't know. Just want to throw
No,
that
and
out there.
it's also the the way that knowing what you want can
Hmm.
carry you through those instances too. You
Yeah.
know, like my, I think about any time that I've ever like had to take one of those bottom level jobs,
Hmm.
dishwashing or prep cooking or cooking or anything like that. Um, and it's always been because I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to be doing,
Hmm.
that that was going to support my ability to have to do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like if
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get here and for the next 5 months upon being there in order to feel stable, I'm gonna have to do this shitty thing,
Hmm.
quote unquote shitty thing. My situation that I'm stabilizing might be such a highlight of my life that it doesn't like it doesn't even occur to me that I'm sucking, that this shit that the other thing that I'm doing sucks.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
In fact, because what I'm doing is such a highlight and overshadows the thing that I'm doing for the work to support it,
Hmm.
I don't realize the work is shitty. In fact, I'm having all sorts of random interactions with people that I never would have met. And in
Yeah.
fact, I take away from it human human relationships, or not human relationships, but like human experiences, like the
Hmm.
people that I met, the dude who was the cook that told me about his life when we worked until midnight and had to work on a holiday or something like that.
Hmm.
Like that's actually what I took away from it. Maybe an ability to cook too from having to be a cook, but the money that I got from it that I saved for to do whatever it is that I did with that, that's gone. You know,
Yeah.
the experience of my life, it's not like a vacation. You know, I spend a year in the tropical rainforest, like that's, I spent a year as a dishwasher, like that's not, that I'm not writing home to mom about that. I don't have pictures of that on my wall or in my book, you know, or on, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the things that I was doing there to, again, the reason why I was using that job or that position to stabilize for a lifestyle that I wanted to live, I do have pictures of the lifestyle. I do have pictures and photographs and memories from that,
Hmm.
the highlight of my life at that point in time. And because I have that, I also have the benefit of remembering those funny experiences when I worked with that dude or that woman or that person, or later in life when I see these people again and we get a chance to be like, ah, this is where I met you. Wasn't that a different time? Oh,
Mm.
wow, look at where you're at right now. Okay, that's cool. Again, if we talk about in the pre-combo, we were talking about like the ability to share the code, and this
Hmm.
phrase that keeps coming to my mind is cross-leveling. So the
Mm.
basic idea that like if I have a full water bottle and you have a water bottle that's half full, then I benefit from giving you a quarter of my water bottle so that we both have, 3/4 of a water bottle.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because it just works that way. Like it's better to have it like that. Period.
Exactly.
And I can
Exactly.
I can list all the different reasons of why, or scenarios why that might prove to be better. But that idea of cross leveling, it is
Mm.
better. And so, I jumped off on a tangent for a second, but what what's coming to my mind is like I come across, like there's a Spanish teacher at the high school in Montpelier who I worked with as when she was a waitress and I
Mhm.
was like a prep cook. She was a waitress, I was a prep cook. She wasn't a Spanish teacher, I wasn't a company owner. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it just so it there's this opportunity to look back at that and to be like, okay, that's her success where she is, me being able to recognize her success where she is, her own pursuit of her own passion and achievement of her own goals. Um, enriches my experience that much more because I'm looking at somebody who also did the same thing,
Mm.
proving to me twice over that the highlight that I was doing that thing to stabilize was worth it in the first place.
Mm. Mhm.
Working that shitty job for a year was worth it because of where it led me. Not in some magical, mystical way, but
Mhm.
truly because what I was doing in my off hours was building myself into the life that I built
Right.
going forward. You know what I mean? And I've had to do that a couple of times, like
Oh, yeah.
start and come, like when I moved into Burlington to jump North Country Kettlebells and stopped operating in Berlin, I had to get a couple of night jobs so that I could let things pick up. And I was thinking about it actually, like talk about human potential. And I've said this to somebody earlier today. It's amazing how we can adapt to things, right? So
Yeah.
like I worked Monday, I would train on Mondays during the day, train folks, maybe had like 4 sessions on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I didn't have a whole lot of sessions in the week. I just it hadn't picked up fast, you know? And so I basically like would train on Mondays and then I would go to work at Monday evenings from like 5 to 9. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would go to another job from like 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
or from like 10 to 5. And then I would go and teach from 6 to 7. And
The
then I
next
would go home
morning.
and go to sleep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I remembered barely even being able to get up to go and teach a class at 5:30 in the morning
Mm-hmm.
at all in my life. Like when I first started teaching morning classes, I remember it being hard to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go teach.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about having woken up at 5:30 the previous morning on Monday and now
Right.
teaching on Tuesday morning at 6 and
Right.
still knocking the class out and still
Right.
getting clients from that group class work that I was doing. And so, like human potential, when passion is
Mm.
the carrot,
Mm-hmm.
right? When passion is the driving force, human potential is endless. And
Mm.
so again, if we talk about the training experience, why are you doing it? Why are you coming to North Country Kettlebells? What
Mm.
is it? What part of your life is it feeding? How much of your life is it benefiting?
Mm.
Well, then when you knock it out of the park, of course it's going to shatter everything else. It's going
Yeah.
to the wave, the shock wave that it sends out is going to rock a lot of different boats, like
Yeah.
that sort of idea. And so if we
Oh.
can do that with and I'll tie this together with how we're kind of talking about some of the ways that we surround ourselves with the things that are going to give us those responses. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing happens if it's the flip side, and
Right.
it's not enriching, it's not empowering. If it's
Mm.
if it's if it disempowers me, if it takes away my energy, if it dampens me,
Mm.
um then it's still reverberating
Right.
either way.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's still sending the shockwave out. So,
Absolutely. That can be like positive or negative.
right.
It works in both ways. I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, if you haven't listened to the origin story, listen to the episode 1
Mm.
origin story, because we trace some of that, how we got to where we are, and it's so
Mhm.
helpful. And I'm also thinking about, in terms of the adaptive nature of things, I can very much relate, especially when we look back in hindsight. Sometimes when you think about, gosh, like, how did I do that? How did you do that? How did you have that energy to sustain that type of schedule? But oftentimes when we're in it, it's it's just you're just doing it.
Mhm.
There's not a
Mhm.
lot of thought. I can think of times where I've never had that schedule. I'll be honest. I've never I've never had like that full overnight, but I've certainly, especially in the early days of getting the business going, like, you know, 4 hours of sleep was that was a good night. Like, that
Mhm.
was what it was. And you just think about, I don't, yeah, sometimes I just think back and I'm like, oh my God, I was, teaching X amount of classes and running to this and making the playlists and dealing with these clients. And then I was doing all the laundry for the business. And, um, I don't have experience being a parent yet, but I think also, when you're raising a young child and you're like, sleep is at a minimum, a lot of things need your attention. It's like the
Right,
world
right.
keeps turning, but like it gets, you just do it, I guess. I don't know. That's actually the one of the beautiful things about humanity, I think, is this
Mm.
this this adaptive nature, this nature to just kind of like keep going. And I don't know if that's just out of survival or self-preservation or like what it is, but
Well, there's the initial just to keep going, but then there's the now you're getting better at it, and now you've forgotten that it was even a thing in the
yeah.
beginning. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so like so there is this survival mechanism, but then there's this like thriving mechanism that
Mm,
also plays into it, because now I went for the gold. I
Yeah.
went for I traversed this treacherous path to get here.
Yeah.
And once I got here, I realized that everything on this side that prepared me for it. So like
Yes.
I traversed the treacherous path to get here, and now I'm here. So everything that's getting thrown at me, the treacherous path already gave me the muscle memory for how to drag this thing over, even if it's not something that I've ever experienced before.
Mm.
Even if it has the potential to clobber me and crush me, and
Mm-hmm.
my overcoming that is actually going to get me to a next point myself. Even like if it's a real thing,
Mm.
but everything that I've done to get me to this point to even be able to tackle this next thing has shown me that I have the potential to get past this thing, to take it, to survive it, then
Mm-hmm.
to learn it, then to apply it, and then to get better at it. And then again, here's another
Mm.
toolkit that I'm actually a beast at using, And so
So
that's, to
this
me, again, it's that passion that drives the ability to see that.
it does my wheels are turning now because I can always thread the needle between I can make I can relate what you're saying to also training methodologies,
Mhm.
which we have a podcast on that. But I'm thinking about this notion of periodization, right? And sort of this like a gradual approach into, a lot of the ways that you introduce what you introduce. Like, it's like we can take a snapshot of my training, for example, and the fact that I can put, 50 plus pounds overhead. And if you told me that like on day one, I would have been like, what? Now it's like, of course. But it was very deliberate means intentional. We got there a certain way. And where I'm going with this is I'm just thinking of somebody who's maybe, I don't know, on the path or like maybe struggling or something. And I'm wondering if I know we don't like really give advice on this podcast, but I'm just kind of, we've been talking about sharing the codes. And
Mhm.
in your experience, has part of what's led you to get through maybe some of the tough moments is for you to think about it as only being temporary?
Mm.
Like, do you do that either with a trick of the mind or that, like this is a temporary situation to get me where I need to go? Or I don't know. It's going to be different for everybody, but
Yeah, it is definitely. Um, and it's going to be different from situation to situation.
right,
You know what
right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Um, like in current context, um, working on this video series, and now I'm working on like the final titles.
Mm-hmm.
So in working on the titles, I'm doing everything backwards essentially.
Mm.
So starting with the last videos that I made, titling them, and then going backwards to the first videos that I made. And I'm watching it deteriorate as I go back in time. I'm
Uh-huh.
watching the narration get more choppy. I'm
Yeah.
seeing how when I look at the beginning, like when I look where I finished, right, where I started, where I finished,
Yeah.
I'm even the blocks where it's like, here's the talking, here's the video, here's the talking, here's the video. Very concise. Every single one has boom, 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 very points. I can see where I started writing scripts. I can see
Wow.
where you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then now I'm doing the ones where I didn't have a script before. So I'm having to move around a lot. Not only that, but I didn't really know the program that well either.
Yeah.
So there are different things that I had to piecemeal and figure out how to do. So I'm having to almost fix certain things. So my point is, like, in the beginning, I knew I would get better.
Right.
And so it allowed me to deal with being shitty at it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It allowed me and here's this. This morning, as I'm working on one of the videos, I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back and remake some of those early videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but this shit is easy now.
Right. Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's easy now. Now I know I can go and knock out 3 videos worth of content in 45 minutes and
Yeah.
come back, and it'll take me a half an hour to edit each one of them down to done. I
Yeah.
already have all of the titles and everything in place. All I'm doing is cutting out my choppy narration where my hair looked funny and the camera was slightly off, and
Yeah.
I'm putting it back with the proper lighting and the proper hair and the proper everything that I figured out by the end of it. And
Mm.
so something that maybe took me 7 weeks to figure out how to get good at
Mm-hmm.
now only takes me 15 minutes to apply my goodness to it, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that it's a combination of understanding that this is going to be temporary, but there's also the excitement of like, no, I'm actually going to get good at this thing, because
Yeah.
I can see in my vision, not just like my as a visionary, but based on like the goals that I've written for myself. This is where I want to be, this is what I want to be able to do, so on and so forth.
Mm.
If I'm going to achieve those things, like the whole list of checked off things is showing me that I'm going to achieve those things, then I'm going to get good at doing that. And so I take
Mm.
that into the beginning. I take that into it, is like, it's if it, sure, it's going to suck now and there's going to be a learning curve and I'm going to get
Yeah.
better and better, but at some point I'm going to be a beast at this, and then imagine everything that I'm going to be able to do with it.
I wanna like just reinforce that a little bit, because I think it's so important, because we can put up these barriers of starting something because it's hard in the beginning, because we're
Mm,
not necessarily good. And I think a lot of people, myself included, at one time in my life would avoid certain things because, maybe some stuff that didn't come naturally to me. I'm like, no, because I didn't want to put in the work. Like, I'll be very honest about that. There's some things in my life that I was like, no, if I'm not, I'm just going to do the things that I'm automatically good at. Right.
mm,
And that's like really playing it safe. And you're not ever grow. Like, you're not accessing your full potential by
mhm,
playing it safe. And by saying like, I could think about this a couple different ways. Like, starting kettlebells. I'm like, I'm not right now, I'm not where I was when I started. Well, of course. Like, I got an opportunity. I think about like first when you introduced the snatch, which is a skill. Um, we would spend like half an hour working with a lighter kettlebell on the mechanics of it. And now we're at the point where you can just be like, all right, we're just going to spend a few minutes, like just whip out like, 40 reps, like, or, whatever, not in a row, but you know what I mean? Close.
yeah,
Um,
sometimes.
right.
Right.
And of course that's not where I was on day one. So I think part of it is like, you know, overcoming the fear of like not being good at something in the beginning and giving it a shot, being patient with the process, and and just kind of like surrendering to, there's this like aspect of humility involved when you don't know something, right? Like even now, like let me just pull it back once to I'm a spinning instructor, I'm a cycling instructor. Part of that is I DJ playlists and I put stuff together. And at this point in my career, like you could throw me on stage in front of a bunch of people and I could teach a spin class without preparation. Like you could even say, well, I've done this before. Like you could just say, hey, this guy's going to DJ the playlist. You don't actually know what he's going to play and you still have to teach. And I'd be like, I got this. Like I know the craft. When I started, like the day I decided that I wanted to be a cycling instructor, I would spend hours and
Mm,
hours like prepping, picking songs. Dude, I used to in the way that I learned to teach, which I do not use this method anymore, you basically map out like hieroglyphics. Like there's like literally like a code, like are you going to teach a hill? Is it going to be a flat? Are you
wow.
And I would prep with a note card. Like I would have infographics like on a note card that was my lesson plan. And I was like, I would even have things mapped out. Like I'd have a song and I'd be like, at minute 135 is when you sprint. I mean, it was
Wow.
like,
Wow.
because also in my past life, it was all about it was like giving a presentation. Like I wanted to be prepared.
Hmm.
Of course, almost a decade later, put me in the hot seat and you're going to get an awesome class. And I just,
Hmm.
I don't even think of it's like, it's just part of me. It's just, you let it
Right.
happen. But, had it's, I guess the point of this whole thing is like anybody listening, like you can do anything, like you can learn anything. If if you want to become fluent in Spanish and you don't know any Spanish today, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a fluent speaker in a few years.
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
we set our own limits. we are so good at setting these boundaries and limits. And, you can literally, yeah, it's just like you can do whatever you want to set out to do. And you're going to be shitty at it at first. Well, maybe
Right.
not everybody. I mean, some people will be, maybe not.
But there's going to be something that you're going to be shitty at if
Yeah,
you're
there's
if
going to be
you're trying
something.
to get at some things that are beyond your current scope, if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
and so it's all about the the chewable bites, you know. Give
Yeah.
yourself things that reinforce what you're capable of doing, and then really, really dive deep into what you're capable of doing and do that and get really, really good at doing that while you're still adding on the things that you're gonna have to get better at, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
You know,
yeah, the
yeah, go ahead. I'm just like
oh no,
but
it's
a lot's coming up. It's just, I mean, whatever it is, I had a friend who, she was saying to me recently, like, oh, she's like, I'm a really shitty cook, so I don't cook that much. I'm like, well, how do you think you get better at cooking? You just got to cook, and maybe you make a lot of crappy meals. Like, there's going to be some trial and error as you're figuring it out. But, I don't, it's just funny, like how we position our things. Like, I'm bad at something, so I'm not going to do it.
mm,
Like, that's actually not, no, because the only way that you even can attempt at getting better at something is to actually do the thing
right.
and do it
Well,
again. And right?
it's to
No.
have the desire
Yeah.
to want to actually do the thing, and that's
Exactly.
and when it comes into we were talking about um purpose,
Hmm.
using yourself for the purpose that you're intended for, right? So we were talking about like our charts and things like that, and
Yeah.
basically like this is what the energy of your life is trying to be directed towards. And so, if you get used in that way, then you're going to reach your highest, you know
Mm,
what I mean? But if you're not getting used in that way, if you're doing something that's counter to what your energetic is, then you're going to keep spinning the wheels. It's going to be a little bit more miserable, things like that. Because that we were talking about, like, well, what's missing, and
mm,
actually the question that oftentimes gets put out there is what's wrong with me, you know
mm,
what I mean, and that sort of idea. But in reality, it's like there's more to it than just that. And so there has to be that desire, first of all, to say like, I want to be able to do the thing,
mm,
because if I butt up against how hard it gets and I decide I don't want to do it, well,
mhm.
then I didn't have the desire to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I had the desire to try it, and then I maybe find something else. And that doesn't have to be a negative thing. Maybe
Mhm,
the thing that I go to try then ends up being the thing that I can pour myself into,
mhm,
because that thing is actually what my passion was calling me towards. And I had to bump and go back and forth and try this career out and try that avenue out and try this relationship out and try out that friendship and so on and so forth, and figured out who I was, or
mm,
what I wanted to do, or where it was that I'm actually trying to get to. But again, at some point along the line, I have to make the decision to try to go somewhere else. And I think that, as because we're coming from it from an entrepreneurial standpoint, that seems to be implied, you know.
right, right,
But also because we're in 2021 and we can do any you can start all sorts of stuff whenever you want to. There's so many different avenues of getting into business. We oftentimes do get to see, like, actually I'm not that interested in that business. Like, when
mhm,
I learned how easy it was to start LLCs in Vermont, I was like, oh, let's start an LLC for this, you know what I mean, and try that out. And then realize, like, no, I don't want to focus on primitive strength training as my bread and butter. That made sure I can add that in. Okay, that's a fun thing to do. Okay, maybe somebody wants to get into it, but I don't need to start an LLC that I'm now going to put all my heart and soul into.
mm,
I can try it and see if that's what I want to do. But when I butt up against those walls that are going to tell me that I'm going to have to evolve to become somebody different so that I can do this and be successful at it, it's going to show me, well, do you actually want to do that? Is that going to take
mm,
away from what you're actually doing?
mhm,
Is that going to suck up your energy from North Country? So, to not speak, vaguely, like if I have a company, Stonehammer Fitness, that's supposed to be collaborating with people and creating primitive strength training environments, then in order to be successful at that, I got to put all my attention into it. Well, if I put all my attention into Stonehammer Fitness, what is that going to do to North Country Kettlebells? And what do I have a desire? What's my better desire? Like, am I trying to do Stonehammer so that I can get some extra income in so I can support North Country Kettlebells? Well, if that's the case, then why am I going to drain my energy from the thing in order to do the other thing? So in trying that thing and hitting some of those walls and trying to, and finding that I'm spread thin, it allowed me to say, hey, that thing, I don't need to keep trying that. I don't need to, and you know, coming back to the It's Elemental podcast. So that episode, if you go back and listen to it, you were saying that exactly, which is like sometimes we learn that I don't need to put my energy into that direction. Maybe that thing is showing me that that's not where I need to be pouring my passion, and I'm gonna go back in this direction double hard. And for me, that's typically what happens is like, oh, I'm gonna double down now because I've done something that showed me how much more passionate I actually am about this than anything else. And so I'm gonna double down on that thing. You know what I mean? And oftentimes those are those breakthrough moments where something happens, and all of a sudden I'm on the other side of it, looking back and being like, oh shit, I forgot that I even hit this fork in the road in which I was like tempted to go left, and it was like, oh, I'm gonna stay the path, and then like it
Right.
opened up the whole universe to me.
As always, like what, you know, you're talking and it's like sparking, you know, ideas, and what you just said is making me think of too, is about this idea of energetics and how to spend energy, but also like the idea that we don't have to just go it alone. So one of the ways that we can conserve and preserve energy is to collaborate and share. And um, Mujib and I have been talking a lot about DJ Khaled's latest album and like how amazing it is. And it is like, it's just this beautiful collaboration of amazing artists. And I'm bringing that up to say like, you know, that's not to say like, you know, if anybody wants to put the core focus of an energy on A, but then you're like, but hey, I can like collaborate with this person or these people, and like, because there's a piece of me that wants to do this thing, but I can't put 90% of myself into it, but I can give like 20%. And maybe that 20% combined with someone else's 20% and someone else's, you know what I mean? Like can actually do the thing. So, like I've been thinking about a lot of that lately, like just the empowering aspect of collaborating and like opening up. And it's just like, yeah, we don't have to walk these paths like completely alone, like nor should we. Like, you know, some stuff is, or like I'm kind of all over the place, but like when you share your passion and you're like, oh, that's awesome because this is my passion, and that kind of dovetails, and maybe, you know, maybe there's a way we can work together and we share that energy. I even think of like this collaboration right here, right? Like it's it doesn't need to take it's not 100% of what we do on the daily, but it's a very important percentage, you know, is like this just adds to the other. But anyway, I've been thinking a lot about that, like how to just get, you know, get people on the team. And like, you know, if you have a passion for something, like that can be really contagious. Or if you know, put yourself out there, put your ideas out there, like it can be really natural for people to be like very protective over their ideas or even sometimes their passions. And it's like, no, I mean, let that out, because I mean, that's when you can really truly realize some great things as well, you know? It's and yeah, I don't know. I've just been keep thinking about that album. I mean, it's just beautiful. I think like some of the greatest achievements of humankind were done in collaboration.
Yeah, totally,
You
totally.
know?
And with that album as kind of the is that my with that album as the example for what I'm about to say right now, there's the benefit, the high benefit of one person saying, I'm trying to put 100% of every single part of myself and being into this. And it's going to push my potential. I have to become different on the other side of this thing by being able to wield this thing. that I'm trying to
Yeah.
create. You know what I mean? And so that to use the album, that's Khaled, right? He
Yeah.
has to just to become this different person to be able to be Khaled, right?
Yeah.
And embody fully in his whole self. He has to use himself to maximum potential.
Yeah.
Um, because he's calling on people to say like, and I'm this is my grand vision, my maximum potential. I need this person on this.
Hmm.
Well, then that person who comes to it is bringing they're seeing that energy, and they're like, oh, well, to me being on this album is the height of everything that I've been trying to do myself. So this is my opportunity to bring my 100% to the table,
Hmm.
and everybody on the album did that. And
Hmm.
so that's the beauty of collaboration as well, when
Hmm.
it's like again, to take it back to some of the pre-combo we were talking about with the panning for gold and jewels and things like that. um well, if if you've panned for generations and you've got all of this, and I've panned for generations, I've got all of this. Well, once we get together and you say, hey, I'm putting together this massive party, I want you to be a showcase for it, wear your finest.
Hmm.
Well, then when I show up in my finest, now you have a showcase as well. When the 12 other people that you also asked to do the same thing, well, now when you stand up, you have this beautiful spectrum of the finest. All these
Mm.
people brought their finest to the table,
Hmm.
and so you have these people living at their 100% of their potential, or trying to push their 100% of their potential into this moment. You have this people bringing their finest to the table, and then you have this person now I am Khaled. I'm going to present you all with this masterpiece
Mm.
of, here's me being my fullest potential, bringing these other 13 people to their fullest potential onto this album. Listen to
Hmm.
it. And so, if we talk about a collaboration to bring that back to like the here and now, um, you know, you were really good doing this with Rev itself, because every class had its regulars. Every class had its people that were like, that was their shit. Like,
Yeah.
that class is my shit. Like, I
Yeah.
love that class. Like, I could be at any of these other classes, but that class right there that's the one I want to be at all the time, every time.
Hmm.
And the reason is because that person brought the instructor there was bringing their 100%, because that was the vibe was turned up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're all going to bring our top notch. So
Hmm.
try to bring your top notch. Write the best thing that you can write. Make it the rockinest thing that you can make it. And if everybody's like, that's what I'm doing. If nobody's like, maybe not. I don't. Maybe if I don't want to bring my 100% today, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
nobody was really that. Everybody was like, well, this thing is, I'm doing this thing to feed this passion that I actually have, this
Yeah.
actual highlight that I'm getting from doing this. I'm not just doing this because I'm tied to it and I'm miserable about doing it. I'm doing it because it's actually feeding a greater need.
Mm.
It's actually feeding a greater purpose. It's serving a greater mission that I have in my life to be actualized in this way or that, you know.
Mm. You
Because it
know.
could be something as simple as something. I'll say this, and then I'll get off because I'm on this wicked tangent. But it could be something as simple as somebody being like, "I want to be a spin instructor and instruct at this awesome ass place because that shit seems fun,
Hmm.
and I think it's gonna add some dimension to my life." And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, like, it blossoms and becomes what you never even imagined it would have been. That sort of thing.
Oh, yes. And I actually want to stay with the album analogy for a second, because I think there's so much to be gleaned from a collaborative album and the power of a feature, and like what that does. Like, you get a track and maybe there's three features on it, or more, or whatever. And part of that is like letting people shine. Like, I was kind of like hearing you talk about like bringing your finest, like bringing um and like we've talked about this a lot, like personally, just in the way that the way that we have conversations. But it's like, I think when you believe in yourself, when you are not threatened by other people, like there's a way to walk in the world. Like, if you truly believe like there's enough to go around, I'm confident in who I am and what I do. I don't see, I'm not like I want Mujib to be successful. I'm not threatened by, I want North Country Kettlebells to be as successful as it can possibly be. And for you to be as successful as you can possibly be, that is not a threat to me
Right.
or my identity or my success or my ability, right? Like I really think about this in terms of like that album context. It's like, if I'm going to put you on my album, like I want you to spit fire. Like I want it to
Mm-hmm.
be like the best thing you've ever
Mm-hmm.
done. Like, right?
Totally.
Why would I be like, yeah, I want you to come on my album, but I hope your verse sucks.
Right, 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 right.
And I don't know if
Don't
that's,
overshadow my verse or something like that,
yeah.
you know. Yeah.
Or I think I've been watching a lot of Mikes and Men and on Wu Tang and some other stuff. It's just like, you have a group of like 8 guys, like it's just sort of like unheard of. I was watching an episode where when they were looking to get a record deal, and some people were like, wait, what? Like this is too many people. And they're like,
Uh,
no, it's like all of us or it's none of us, right? Like
right.
that was the mentality. And that hadn't been done really, right? And it's just like this idea that we all bring something unique to the table, and it's like, you know um like we can all shine. There's space for us all to glow and be amazing, and then it adds to everybody else. And I've always appreciated surrounding myself with those types of people, and in that environment it's like, no, there is enough. Like I want to feature other folks, like like do your thing, do your amazing
Right,
thing, because
right,
it brings everybody else up. It
right.
raises the bar, it brings everybody else up. And so yeah, again, just kind of like circling back to this human potential thing, like, you want to see that best come from everybody and support that. I don't want to see
Mhm.
anybody like trip or fall, or that's not what it's about. you know
Right, right, right.
like,
Or
no.
struggle up along next to me trying to figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there are those people out there. It's like, I think back to just before the pandemic hit, Mujib, when we had the workshop on
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
leadership and motivation, to catch just some folks up, literally like 2 weekends before everybody shut down everything. At Rev, I led a workshop on like being a motivator and a leader, and that potential. And if I'm remembering correctly, I just think that one of the things that came out was, just again, like empowering other folks on your team. Like as a leader myself, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room, nor do I want to be. Like that's not the goal. It's not my goal to show off. It's not my, I'd be blessed to be just sitting at a table and be like, okay, what can I learn from everybody sitting here? Like we can all learn
Mm-hmm.
from each other. And that's a leadership style. I think that's also just like a level of confidence and humility mixed together. Like I'm okay to admit, like, yeah, I don't know everything.
Right,
How could I? But I'm here to learn, and I just think that's an important aspect of leadership, and everybody grows,
right.
when things are done like that. I don't know, I'm just a big fan of collaboration.
Totally, totally, totally. And it makes me think of the confidence piece of it all makes me think of this. It's like if I know if I know that I'm smart, like I have uh if I have a level of not just faith, but if I can feel comfortable in my own ability to navigate a certain situation, and I know that I'm not the smartest person in the room, then I know that we're going to get to a place that's even better than what I can even imagine it being.
Mm.
Because I know that what I bring to the table is amazing. I know that what I bring to the table is going to have a high impact. And I know that I'm not the person who's going to bring the heaviest thing to the table. And
Right.
so if that's what we're collaborating with, if that's the energy that we're sharing, then of course we get excited by each other
Hmm.
and kind of using again that, well, to use both the album as the analogy, but then also to use the idea of asking everybody to wear their finest, you know what I
Hmm.
mean, and show up in their finest. Every different hairstyle is going to offer somebody showing up with a different beautiful hairstyle, right?
Hmm.
Because if your hair is the way that your hair is, then you doing your hair to its finest is going to produce something that's completely different from what I produce with my hair at its finest. But when we stand next to each other, it's going to be this again, this like knocking down of brilliant
Mm,
presentations. And
mm-hmm.
so that's the same thing with collaboration. If everybody's bringing their finest to the table, then you're going to have this thing that just looks great in every direction, no matter where you look, no matter where you scroll, no matter where you end up. It's going
Mm,
to be you're at somebody bringing their fucking best to the table. And they're bringing their best to the table in a place where everybody is showing and proving that we can continue to push farther.
mm-hmm.
We can continue to, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like a push farther, like take it to the next level. Sometimes it could be just like broadening, widening
Mm,
what it is that you're doing, getting better at what you're doing, letting it saturate, letting it soak in. It's like it makes me think of cooking all of a sudden, like making a soup, you know what I mean? Like a soup is going to be the best on second and third day, that sort of
right.
idea. So if I make a soup and I finish the soup today, I gotta make the next soup tomorrow, finish that soup tomorrow, make the next soup the next day, finish that soup. I'm never even getting the benefit from letting the soup like actually marinate or saturate.
Right.
So I think about that too. And I think about like it's not necessarily just about pushing to the next level or getting on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I offered a great class this week, but now next week I got to do something completely different. It's got to be
Mm-hmm.
I got to up myself the next time. Well,
Mm,
sometimes you did something that was really fucking brilliant. Let's have you refine that brilliance and see if you can bring that every time. What is it about that brilliance?
mm. I
Uh,
really appreciate you saying that because I personally definitely fell into that trap for some time, thinking that, as a teacher, as a coach, that you have to like always outdo yourself or always one up yourself or something like that, or that you always have to, I always fell into like, I don't want the client to get bored. So I've got to do this one week and then I'm going to do this another week. And, and actually the part of the really kind of coaching through the pandemic and kind of having I'm still completely virtual and I have mostly the same group of people that have been working out with me week after week. And I started to notice like, yeah, I put push-ups in every class. Like there's elements that are in every single class. And I actually spoke on it recently and I was like, yeah, this is important because don't you feel like now like you're very comfortable with this and it's easier, like your form's better, you know, XYZ, when sort of this other way I used to coach would be like, oh no, I've got to like constantly be throwing at them all this like different stuff and this variety and keep it exciting and keep it new and fresh. And then I'm like, am I actually helping people get better
mm,
at
mm,
things? So I definitely like had that moment. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And that was my own kind of like had to kind of think about that. And it's also a little bit different because I know, I don't have one-on-one clients anymore. So, you know, when you do group fitness, I think there is this idea that like everything like has to be, it's got to be different from the next thing, but it really doesn't, it's just like, yeah, you want to give people this sense of like, oh yeah, I'm actually like I'm improving or I'm learning, on this one element. It doesn't have to be like what's flashy and different every single time.
right, right, right.
Just tangent on the fitness thing. But we are coming up on, yeah, we're coming up on the
Yeah.
need to wrap up here.
Mm-hmm.
Um as
Oh, that's
always,
awesome.
I know I was gonna say as always, like it feels good. It feels good. Um yeah, human potential.
Mm-hmm.
We've all got it.
Right, right. And it really goes much farther than what even we can imagine. It's like think about how much farther beyond the farthest that you might have imagined before, right? So like in the beginning, the
Mhm.
highest height and then like what's gonna look like when I've hit it. And then where is it now in terms of that?
Wow.
And what's happened since you hit that point?
Mhm.
And what I just always think about like what's present that I never even would have imagined in the beginning. Like
Mm.
what now is so commonplace every single day that it's like I didn't even think about this part of it.
Mm.
I never even thought about that part of it. I just wanted to serve this community, or I just wanted to do this thing, or I just wanted to get this information out there. I just
Mm.
wanted to share this code with you. I
Mhm.
couldn't have imagined what you were going to do with it and
Mm.
what that was going to do for me, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
so on and so forth. It's just like we get to these heights, this potential. When you start diving into it, you realize that it's really just still scraping the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it as always. I
Mm.
always feel so much better when we talk while we're talking, after we talk, all of it. And I just really hope that other folks feel the same, or again, sort of just the whole energy is just feels good. It feels right. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Mujib. And I want to thank everybody for listening to another episode of Let's Get to It. My name is Sarah,
My name is Mujib.
and take care.